You are listening to the Intelligent Vocalist Podcast, episode 92.
Welcome to the Intelligent Vocalist with John Henny. This is the podcast dedicated to help you be a smarter, better, more informed singer. And now, your host for the Intelligent Vocalist, John Henny.
Hey there, this is John Henny. Welcome back to another edition of The Intelligent Vocalist. I do so appreciate you spending your precious listening time with me. All right, today I want to talk about common mistakes that singers make with vocal exercises. And the biggest one that I see is not understanding why you're doing an exercise in the first place. We very often are looking for the quick fix, the magic exercise that's going to change our voice. And voice teachers will feed into this. And I've done it myself. I've got a podcast named The Greatest Secret of Singing, as if this one idea will fix everything. Well, actually, the one idea will do a lot. So you can go back and listen to that podcast. I think it's my first or second podcast. But there is no exercise that is the great panacea, that is the one thing that's going to cure all of your ills. And as we run around and jump from exercise to exercise, we often don't understand why we're doing the exercise in the first place. And this is critical. If you don't know why you're doing it, then you will likely not understand how to employ the exercise for your voice. Each vocal exercise has variations that will be adjusted to each singer. When I'm using vocal exercises, I will use the same exercise for different singers, but I will employ it in slightly different ways. For one singer, I may change the overall range, the highest to lowest note that I encompass within the exercise. Other singers, I will focus more on a specific area of the voice. I may do the exercise more quickly for some singers. I may slow it down for other singers. It all depends on what's going on. And you need to understand what you are trying to fix in your voice. And an idea of, I just want to sound better, that's kind of a start, but we need to be a little more precise than that. What is it that you don't like in your voice? And then what aspect of that, as we bore down and focus even more, what specific aspect are you not liking in your voice? And the better you get that answer, then you can choose an exercise that is going to focus on that. And you can understand how to best do the exercise. Now, that having been said, there are some common mistakes that I see singers make on some popular voice exercises. So I'm just going to cover a handful of those. And when you understand the type of mistakes that are made with these exercises, you can begin to see patterns, and you can see how you can fix or do other exercises in a more precise way. An extremely popular group of exercises, and I've talked about them in the past and on my last podcast about the straw, are these semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. Man, I love how we create all these really complicated terms. It just means there's some blockage, there's some extra resistance. And a very popular one is the lip bubble. And the common mistake I hear on the lip bubble, well, there's a couple. The first is people just blow too much air. So you want to think about making the lips go as slowly as possible. But there is a vowel sound underneath the lip bubble. And I'll show you the two distinctions. I can go, or I can go, and the second one has more depth. My larynx is sitting a little lower. When you do the lip bubble, you want to think of a slightly deeper and that should increase in depth as you go higher, so that you don't get, but rather, and I'm really thinking of the vowel underneath going, so that it offsets the larynx tendencies to rise, get over-involved with the pitch. And there's acoustic reasons why that happens. Now, the great thing about the lip bubble, as well as the straw or the tongue trill, is that tendency of the larynx to follow the pitch, to grab, is reduced because of the back pressure that you create with the extra resistance. It creates a little more stability. So your vocal cracking and that need to want to grab should be reduced. If you feel tension when you're doing the lip bubble, it's your larynx is just coming up. Now, the other thing that singers get caught up in is they think, I got to get my larynx down. And I did the same thing. I was told, oh, your larynx is high. So I'd be putting my fingers on my larynx, that Adam's apple in a guy, and I'd be trying to hold it down. That's really an inefficient way to do it, because if the vowel is getting shallow, if your vowel is going, and you're changing the sound, your larynx is coming up to make that sound. Controlling the larynx through vowel sounds is, to me, much more efficient. Just thinking as you go higher. So keeping that depth in those semi-occluded vocal tract exercises can be helpful. The other one is using voice consonants. A lot of times, mum, na, 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 na. And you want to be careful with the consonant itself, because you will see a repeating pattern here. The consonant will tend to be shallow. People will say the M rather than So they get mum rather than mum. And you want that depth. Most vocal issues are occurring as you transition into the upper register. The issues are occurring because the larynx wants to follow the pitch, and it wants to do it for certain physiological reasons and also acoustic reasons. And it's trying to avoid an instability that we ultimately need to master as singers. We need to actually go into this area of instability and create stability. But at first, the nervous system just wants to avoid it altogether. It wants to go into a shout condition, and that's what you're experiencing when you get into these shallow vowels, and even the consonant. Mum, the M is too shallow. You need a deeper mum. And that is going to help create stability in the larynx, and then you can start to feel that transfer of resonance. The larynx isn't grabbing onto the resonance, but it's allowing this transition that people will call the passaggio or mix, or these different things. You will likely experience it as the area in your voice where it wants to crack, where you feel like, I can't go any higher. I either have to start shouting or I'm just going to flip. So keeping a little more of this depth is going to help. Another one is the hard G, G. There are voice teachers that will tell you you should absolutely never do this exercise. They are correct for certain students, but the word never, the only time I ever use the word never is to say never say never. But there are students that should avoid it because they're using the G too hard. They are over-constricting. The G is actually a really good way to get some secondary resistance. If you are encountering your voice falling apart, being over-breathy, as you're trying to go up the scale, and it just won't hold. If you get a hard G, gug, 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 it can give you a little more compression. It helps hold back the air, and it can assist your vocal folds in resisting the air and creating a more stable sound wave. However, the nervous system likes to grab onto things, especially in areas where we don't feel secure, like our upper range. And singers will find themselves gug, 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 and they'll start to squeeze the heck out of that G. They'll use the G to actually create more muscle tension at the vocal folds, and that's where you don't want to use the G. What I would say, if you can, you have to control how hard you make that G. You can soften a G up. It doesn't have to be ga, ga. It can be ga, ga, ga. It's just an action. As you say the G, ga, 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 you will feel your tongue come up, touch that soft palate, ga, ga, creating that resistance. You don't have to slam them together super hard. Just a little bit of resistance, and then you can increase the intensity of the G or decrease the intensity of the G, judging by how much air the folds are resisting. If it's still breathy, make the G a little harder. If you hear it start to muscle up, if you feel it start to muscle up, back off on the G. If you have trouble backing off on the G and you just feel over muscling all the time, then yes, don't use the G. However, there are words such as go and guy that you have to use a hard G. So you're going to have to confront them at some point in songs. So this idea of never using a hard G is ultimately, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to use a hard G at some point. Another common issue is taking exercises too high. Everybody wants more range. What do you want in your voice? More range, more range, more range. And voice teachers, if you want to fill your studio, just keep telling people you'll increase their range. You'll increase their range because that's what everybody thinks they need, which is not what they need. Increased range is like likes on Instagram and Facebook. It's a useless vanity metric. How high can you sing? That's your bragging rights. But really what you need as a singer is you need quality of tone and control and balance and the ability to blend between registers much more so than high notes. And what people start doing is they start taking exercises as high as they can go and then a little bit higher. And they start to lose all of the aforementioned control, balance, blending, and they just start to get a mess. And now your body starts to go into this fight or flight. Well, you just start fighting. You start doing everything you can to get these high notes because now that's your goal. The high note is your goal rather than the balance and the muscle control. And you have all these little muscles here that you don't have conscious awareness of that we have to get this fine-tuned control over. And your brain is just firing all these impulses like you're skeet shooting drunk. It's just bam, bam, bam. With no sense of control because all you're thinking is to get the high note. Calm down on the high notes. If you get balance, if you get control, the high notes will come. That's how you get high notes, is through balance and control. On more advanced singers or singers that have done a lot of studying, a common mistake I see is over-narrowing vowels. When you narrow a vowel, you essentially stop the shout mechanism from kicking in. Now, the shout mechanism is a really base motor skill that's hardwired into us. We're all good at doing it. And as we first begin to sing, or if we haven't had much training or we don't have a natural ability, when we get into that transition area, the body will go to what it knows, and it knows shouting. So to take off that shout mechanism, we actually go the other way. And that's what voice teachers do a lot. If you have a condition that the voice teacher wants to fix, we will usually give you an exercise that brings in the opposite condition. And we usually go a little bit too far, depending on how far you are off to, let's say, the left of center. We're going to go a little more right of center to try and pull you back to center. So the exercise that we give you itself is perhaps a little exaggerated. And this narrowing of vowels is what a lot of singers need to do in the beginning to, again, override this shout mechanism. But once they begin to see that narrowing vowels works, you start to do it too much. And the higher you go, if you keep narrowing vowels and you're trying to sing in a big, belty kind of sound, it's not going to work for you because the narrowing of vowels diminishes certain upper frequency energies that are hard for a singer to control at first. So at first, yeah, if a singer's shouting and yelling, it's better to just have them go, ma, 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 ma. I mean, get that really narrowed down because otherwise they're ma, 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 and they're shouting. But ultimately, that is too much. And you can even hear, as I went to do that on those upper notes, ma, 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 I can't really belt into that. It's too constricted. So the vowel actually needs to begin to open back up. However, you need to have a certain level of skill. If you're still shouting and your larynx is just jumping up because it can't let go of the pitch and there's all kinds of cracking, then yeah, you need to stay in narrow vowel land a little bit longer. But the mistake I see is singers who have actually worked these narrow vowels like crazy and they've gotten really good at them and now they're stuck. The vowels have to start opening back up, but they open up in a different way. They open up without the larynx coming up. And that's a bit more advanced for this particular podcast. But yeah, that is a big one for more advanced singers. Another one is taking exaggerated sounds, and specifically what people will call those pharyngeal or bratty or witchy sounds, that nay, 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 nay. And what that does is it thins out the sound and it removes resonances that you would otherwise need to balance, and it creates this exaggerated sound that's easier to make as you go through the break area of the voice. But it still enables you to keep a certain amount of chord closure and compression. So it's this tiptoe way of beginning to feel what singers will call their mix or their passaggio. And it's a great way to start working through that area. But because it's easy, singers will over-rely on it and they will get stuck in it. And they're not seeing that the exercise is an exaggeration and it has done its job, and now it is time to move on to more finished sounds, a fuller sound, not in this little bratty, exaggerated sound. And the key to all of these is really understanding where your voice is at, listening to your voice, and having a deeper knowledge of how all of these things go together. That's one of my main driving reasons for doing this podcast, is I want singers to understand their voices. I remember being totally confused. Why can I sing an A vowel, but E vowels want to flip? I thought there was something wrong with me. Why are certain vowels easier to sing through in this transition? How come I'm doing this exercise, but it's not getting stronger? I remember being told, if you just keep doing this exercise on these over-narrowed vowels, it'll ultimately get stronger. No, it won't. The vowel is too narrow to have strength. And as I began to understand how my voice works, and I began to be able to more accurately diagnose myself and my students, and then to utilize the right exercises in the right way, I've really found, I don't know if I want to say my mission, that gets a little cheesy, but it's something that I really want to give to singers and even teachers who have really good ears, but perhaps just need to understand why they're hearing what they're hearing. So I just really encourage you to learn as much as you can about your voice. You can always go to my website, johnhenny.com, sign up for my email list. I put out, you'll always get a notification when there's a new podcast, and I let people know about my education products, etc. And if you're interested in lessons, you can always check me out there. And yeah, until next time, to better singing. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.